Okay, Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions will come to order. This morning, we will be considering 6 bipartisan reauthorizations, and I'm pleased that we are voting on these bills today. And I just want to take a moment to thank my staff and Senator Cassidy's staff who put a whole lot of work into making these bills possible. First 2 bills we are considering today are S-133 and S-134, a reauthorization of the National Alzheimer's Project led by Senators Collins and Warner, and the Alzheimer's Accountability and Investment Act led by Senator Collins and Markey. Senators Collins, Markey, and Warner are all co-chairs of the Congressional Task Force on Alzheimer's Disease. These bills reauthorize the National Alzheimer's Project through 2035, expand the Associated Advisory Council, and require NIH to submit an annual professional judgment budget estimate for related initiatives directly to Congress. Alzheimer's, as we all know, is a terrible disease. An estimated 6.7 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, and experts estimate that number to increase to nearly 13 million by 2050. I urge my colleagues to support these bills and thank my colleagues, particularly Senators Collins and Markey, for their bipartisan leadership on this issue. The next bill we will be considering today is S-265, the Supporting and Improving Rural EMS Needs Reauthorization Act. That's led by Senators Durbin and Collins. This bill extends a grant program for emergency medical services in rural areas through fiscal year 2028. EMS organizations across the country, as I trust anyone who lives in rural America knows, are in a state of crisis. Overall turnover among paramedics and EMTs ranges from 20 to 30% every year. This program makes sure that people who live in rural areas have the emergency medical staff, volunteers, and equipment they need to provide critical care for their communities. This bill also updates the program by making sure that EMS personnel are trained to care for individuals with mental health and substance use disorders during an emergency, and allowing the use of grant funds to acquire overdose reversal drugs and devices. The next bill we will be voting on today is the Animal Drug and Animal Generic Drug User Fee Amendments Act of 2023, and that's been introduced by Senators Baldwin and Mullen. This bill reauthorizes FDA's user fee programs for veterinary drugs that our nation's farmers and families need for their animals and their pets. We will also be taking a vote on a very good amendment from Senators Marshall and Baldwin that would allow the FDA to approve products that are necessary not just for animals, but for farmers and people as well. These food additives could, for example, reduce salmonella in chickens or encourage milk production in cows. This is a common-sense bipartisan proposal, and I urge my colleagues to support it. The next bill we are considering today is the Sickle Cell Disease and Other Heritable Blood Disorders Research, Surveillance, Prevention, and Treatment Act of 2023, led by Senators Tim Scott and Booker. This bill would extend the program to treat sickle cell disease and prevent and treat complications from sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease is a common inherited blood disorder that can, in some people, cause chronic pain and other serious health problems. I strongly support extending and expanding this program to improve our efforts to treat this disease. Last but not least, the 6th bill we will be taking up today is S-1855, the Special Diabetes Program Reauthorization Act of 2023, led by Senators Collins and Shaheen. This bill will increase funding for the Special Diabetics Program at NIH and the Indian Health Service to make sure that important work to cure, treat, and prevent type 1 diabetes will continue. I support these bills, and I believe they should be signed into law as soon as possible. Senator Cassidy, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Chair Sanders. I also thank our staff who've worked really hard to get this legislative vehicle together. Just acknowledge them. As ranking member of the committee, getting reauthorizations done on time in a bipartisan manner should be a top priority, and today's markup is an important step in accomplishing this goal. I thank Chair Sanders, who's noted his commitment to finishing reauthorizations in a timely manner with support from both Democrats and Republicans. And I look forward to more bipartisan reauthorization markups soon. Thanks to the rest of the committee, you guys all. We don't always agree, but it's our responsibility to put politics aside to make sure that important programs are properly evaluated and improved to benefit our fellow Americans. Today, we're considering several expiring reauthorizations related to public health that enhance treatment and research of serious diseases. Specifically, Senators Susan Collins and Mark Warner's NAPA Reauthorization Act extends the National Alzheimer's Project to 2035, supporting a strategic national plan to combat Alzheimer's and related dementias. We're also marking up Senator Collins and Ed Markey's Alzheimer's Accountability and Investment Act, requiring NIH scientists to submit an annual Alzheimer's research budget directly to Congress. Senator Collins is busy. We're also addressing Senators Collins and Dick Durbin supporting and improving rural EMS needs reauthorization, and I love this acronym, the SIREN Act, which ensures that rural EMS agencies are properly staffed and have the equipment they need to provide critical emergency care to Americans living in rural, underserved areas. We're considering Senators Tim Scott and Cory Booker's sickle cell disease and other heritable blood disorders Research, Surveillance, Prevention, and Treatment Act of 2023, expanding the number of clinicians who can treat sickle cell and improving coordination with other providers. As a physician who worked in a public hospital system for over 20 years, I can personally attest to the devastation that sickle cell can bring at an early age to those who are afflicted. Just making sure that we're fully employed, Senator Collins is working with Senator Shaheen, for a Special Diabetes Program Reauthorization Act of 2023, providing mandatory funding for the Special Diabetes Program and the Special Diabetes Program for Indians, $170 million for each program in fiscal years 2024 and 25. We mark up Senator Tammy Baldwin and Mark Wayne Mullins' animal drug and animal generic user fee amendments of 2023, ensuring that veterinarians, farmers, and ranchers have access to new medicines to keep families and animals healthy and protect against outbreaks of disease. I want to highlight Senator Roger Marshall's policy on zootechnical food substances, which will be offered as an amendment today. This would streamline FDA's review of a new category of products that help farmers and ranchers make their operations safer and more efficient, including products to reduce the risk of foodborne pathogens like Salmonella and E. coli and increase production of milk, eggs, and meat. And as a physician, I would say these products are analogous to the nutritional supplements such as folate and easily absorbed iron for women who are pregnant. The policy gives the FDA similar flexibility for animal products that it has for supplements for humans. I thank Senators Collins, Marshall, Mullen, Tim Scott, Warner, Markey, Durbin, Booker, Baldwin, and Shaheen, who have spearheaded these bipartisan pieces of legislation. These reauthorizations are crucial to improve health care for Americans and for animals, which ultimately is for Americans. Ensuring that these and all reauthorizations are passed and signed into law before September 30th requires the full commitment of every member of this committee and continued leadership from our chair. And our work is cut out. But this markup shows that both sides of the aisle are committed to working together to get these reauthorizations completed. And today's bipartisan effort should be a model for how this committee functions going forward. And I hate to end on a downer note, though, but it appears, unfortunately, that a bipartisan effort going forward will not always be the case. Yesterday, the chair announced that next week, this committee will depart from its long tradition of bipartisanship to hold its first partisan markup since the Affordable Care Act of 2009. For what? For controversial legislation that will not pass Congress, it will not pass the Senate. For almost a decade and a half, this committee has fulfilled a commitment to work past partisanship, securing real solutions for American families. Breaking this tradition is beyond disappointing. It does not set the stage to complete the important work Americans depend upon us to complete. That said, I thank Chair Sanders for today's markup and all of you for your collaboration. I look forward to today's conversation on how to better these reauthorizations. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy. Now we'll begin consideration of 6 bipartisan reauthorization bills. For the awareness of all senators and staff, we intend to roll all votes until the end, and I'm hopeful we can start voting by 11 a.m. I would also like to ask my colleagues to limit remarks to 2 minutes, and when recognized, please specify the bill and amendment number that you are offering and speaking on. So let's begin with S-133, the NAPA Reauthorization Act, and we have a manager's amendment. I move to adopt the manager's amendment in the nature of a substitute and have it be considered original text for the purpose of further amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Are there any members who wish to speak or offer an amendment to S-133?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by thanking you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Cassidy for including this bill as part of today's markup. It is aimed at continuing the progress that we are making to treat Alzheimer's disease and one day prevent and cure this devastating illness. As the co-chair and founder of the Senate Task Force on Alzheimer's, I very much appreciate this bill and S-134 being considered today. The first bill is the Bipartisan National Alzheimer's Project Act, known as NAPA. It has 25 co-sponsors. The lead co-sponsor on the Democratic side is Senator Warner. They're members of this committee who are also on this bill as co-sponsors. We have, in fact, 25 co-sponsors. I first introduced NAPA with my former colleague, Senator Evan Bayh, more than a decade ago, and Senator Markey championed the effort in the House. Before NAPA, there was no coordinated national plan to focus our efforts to defeat Alzheimer's. NAPA fixed this by convening a panel of experts to create a national plan to prevent and effectively treat Alzheimer's disease by the year 2025. The expert council updates the plan annually. While it appears unlikely that we will achieve the 2025 goal, it has allowed us to pursue an ambitious objective and to find and make progress toward a form of treatment and a means of prevention. Alzheimer's remains the 5th leading cause of death for people over age 65. An estimated 6.7 million older adults are currently living with this devastating disease, and more than 11.5 million provide for their unpaid care. This includes 29,000 Mainers living with Alzheimer's and another 46,000 who are serving as family caregivers. The legislation before us would allow the important work of this council and its national annual plan to continue through 2035. It would also expand the advisory council that assists annually in the development and evaluation of the plan. Our bill reflects strides that we've made in understanding this disease, including a new focus on promoting healthy aging and reducing risk factors. It also recognizes the need to include underserved populations, including individuals with Down syndrome, who are at great risk for Alzheimer's as they age. I want to thank all of the 24 other co-sponsors, and particularly Senators Warner and Markey, for their work. And I thank the Alzheimer's Association, Us Against Alzheimer's, the National Down Syndrome Society, the National Down Syndrome Congress for their endorsement, and I would ask that their letters of support be entered into the record. I urge my colleagues to support the bill.
All right, without objection to the letters, Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. This is just such important legislation. I was the House author of it when it passed. It does need to be reauthorized. Senator Collins, Senator Warner, doing great work, and it's absolutely imperative that we keep this momentum going. 5-7 million baby boomers are going to have Alzheimer's. We have to just keep the focus on it. It's hundreds of billions of dollars that get spent every year out of Medicare and Medicaid to take care of it right now. This is just a very small investment that we make in order to try to make sure the coordination is in place at NIH to make sure that the right research is done. And so I very strongly recommend an aye vote.
Thank you. Senator Paul?
For several years now, I've been requesting unclassified records from HHS and from NIH concerning gain-of-function research. The FBI has concluded, as well as the Department of Energy has concluded, that the virus originated in the lab in Wuhan. Yesterday, they revealed the names of 3 scientists who they believe actually one of the scientists was patient 0, the first person to get COVID, indicating that the pandemic started in the lab. I met with the chairman in January of this year to ask his help, mainly because the administration, like the previous administration, has said they will not honor any requests for records from individual senators, only from chairman. Well, on our side are all Democrats, and we haven't had a lot of luck. Until I have better luck trying to get some of this unclassified material or having any kind of letters to help me get the material, I will join the chairman in blocking the NIH, or blocking all nominees as he's vowed to do. But I'll also will be opposing unanimous consent for any bills out of this committee until we get some help with retrieving, taxpayers fund this research. We should be able to see the research that our government does that we funded. There is nothing classified about this, but they will not give it to us. We've discovered that at least one scientific project, which wasn't funded by DARPA, actually would have created a virus that looks a lot like what COVID-19 ended up looking like. We think they did that research even without the DARPA money, but we'd like to know if there's other grants that were granted, either domestically or in foreign, that are at risk for creating viruses that could create another pandemic. But I'd be willing to work with the chairman if he will, at some point, look at some of our letters that we've asked for request of records. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, over here.
Senator Cassidy, I think, wanted to say.
Okay, go ahead.
Senator Marshall?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to compliment all the folks that have worked on this important legislation. Following up with what the chairman talked about, 6.7 million people with Alzheimer's now. This nation spends $300 billion a year on it. One of our priorities is to save Medicare. How do we save Medicare? I don't think we can save Medicare unless we have a new innovative drug to help treat these patients as outpatients. So whatever we can do to prioritize those new miracle drugs, we need to keep prioritizing that. I'm also concerned about nutrition. I hope that the NIH, CDC pays enough attention to how is nutrition impacting Alzheimer's. And then looking at the genetics of this as well, identifying where in that genome is something that's going to be linked to this. So those would be priorities to us. And I hope as we consider a new NIH director, that person will prioritize the research that we are doing. And I will hope that this committee might go back and say, of all the studies that are being done from a healthcare standpoint, whether it's the CDC, the NIH, the Department of Defense, or USAID, I hope that we realize how important this is, that this will make a difference. The research for Alzheimer's, everybody here is impacted by somebody in their family with Alzheimer's. Thanks again for your leadership.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Senator Kane.
Mr. Chair, I just want to speak in favor of the position that Senator Paul just spoke about, not holding up nominees or refusing unanimous consent, but it frustrated me to no end in the last administration that a U.S. senator making a document request just got a stiff arm from that administration, and then we always had to go through our chairs. And I was able in the Foreign Relations Committee on occasion to convince my chair there to leverage documents from the administration that I was entitled to have. And Senator Paul has raised the same request in the Foreign Relations Committee because some of the documents he's looking for are documents in the possession of USAID and the State Department. And thus far, even though the documents are not classified, he has not been able to get the access to them that he should. So again, I don't think we should be holding up everything else because of that, but it would be, I think members should be able to get information. We're writing authorizing bills. We're on, some on appropriations committees, and the fact that senators can't get information that we should be entitled to is a problem, and I hope we will support Senator Paul in his request.
Let's work together on that. Senator Cassidy, do you want to say one?
I just thank Collins and Warner and Markey for their leadership in making sure that we reauthorize this. Again, I mentioned I'm a physician. We have been incredibly successful at treating diseases that people formerly died from. No one knows anybody now that has died from tuberculosis, and yet tuberculosis was a scourge. And I could go down the list. If you have HIV now and take your medicines, you're probably more likely to die from Alzheimer's than from HIV. As another example, a more recent example of something we've done. That said, that means that there's going to be more people getting Alzheimer's. You're not dying of a heart attack when you're 50, so you get Alzheimer's when you're 80. So I just applaud my colleagues for doing this, and I cannot emphasize too much how important this is for the kind of future healthcare profile of our population.
Okay. Let's now turn to S-134, the Alzheimer's Accountability and Investment Act, and there are no amendments. As a reminder, we are going to be stacking the votes at the end of all of the debates. Are there any members who wish to speak on S-134?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Senator Markey and I introduced this bill with Senators Capito, Warner, Moran, Menendez, Murkowski, Stabenow, Marshall, Smith, and Hickenlooper. We have 22 other bipartisan, or 22 total bipartisan co-sponsors. This complements the bill that we just considered. It would continue through 2035, a requirement that the NIH directors submit an annual budget to Congress estimating the funding necessary for NIH to fully implement NAPA's research goals. This bypass budget helps Congress better understand what additional funding is needed to find better treatments, a means of prevention, and ultimately a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Thanks to the national plan and the bypass budget, Alzheimer's research funding has been increased considerably since the passage of the bill in 2011. We know that this investment holds great promise to ending or preventing this disease, which has had such a devastating impact on millions of Americans and their families. As someone who has lost her father, her grandfather, and 2 uncles to Alzheimer's, I know personally the pain of this devastating illness. We must keep up this momentum, barring any major breakdowns to prevent, slow down, or cure Alzheimer's. This disease is projected to cost more than $1 trillion in direct medical costs by the year 2050. So to follow up on Senator Marshall's point, investing in Alzheimer's research today will yield savings tomorrow. The 2 bills that we just considered will maintain, that we're considering today, will maintain our momentum just as our investments are beginning to translate into new treatments. Alzheimer's is one of our most costly diseases. This gives us the insight on what is needed for funding for research. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I thank the many co-sponsors for their support, and particularly Senator Markey for his lead on his side of the aisle.
Well, thank you, Senator Collins, for your hard work on this. Senator Markey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, in 2010, we had to pass the first bill, break down all the silos at NIH because they weren't sharing information about the brain. National Institute of Aging, infectious diseases, they were all in silos. So we had to break it down so that we would have more cooperation, sharing of information. All of it's related to the brain. This second bill dealt with another problem, which is that there was a dramatic underfunding in basic research in Alzheimer's in the country. So this was passed 10 years ago, the bill that we're now talking about that is going to reauthorize. And what it basically said was that the NIH has to tell the appropriations committees in Congress each year how much money was needed to find the cure by 2025. We set that ambitious goal back then. And I was the House author of that bill as well. Well, we're not quite there yet. And so this bill says we're going to extend it out to 2035, and we are going to make sure that that funding stream keeps going in so we can get the most talented young researchers in America to decide to dedicate their careers to this instead of writing algorithms for hedge funds. Right? You have to have the funding, you know, and so that's really what this is all about. And we've already made tremendous progress. We can now take detailed images of the brain that show up early signs. We have identified dozens of genes that play a role in Alzheimer's disease. We understand better how to care for caregivers. My father was a milkman for the Hood Milk Company. His right arm was the size of my upper thigh, and when we say, "Pop, do you think we should put Ma in a nursing home?" He said, "Eddie, I graduated from Lawrence Vocational High School. Your mother was a brilliant woman. She couldn't go to college because her immigrant mother died, so she had to raise her 3 younger sisters. I was 34. She was 38 when I was the last guy there. She married the milkman. It was an honor that your mother married me. No one's touching your mother in a nursing home, Eddie. No one. We're keeping her right here in our living room, and you got to help me to do it." So we have 6 million people with that story right now and 11 million caregivers. And 15 million baby boomers are going to have Alzheimer's. And it will be $1 trillion budget. It's going to be the same number as the defense budget within 25 years. One disease in terms of how much money the federal government will have to spend. So failure is not an option. We have to solve it. This bill just extends it out for another 10 years so that we can telescope the time frame it takes to deal with it. We're now seeing a link between inflammation and viral illnesses on Alzheimer's, and perhaps unsurprisingly, that pollution in the air we breathe affects our brains and puts us at greater risk of Alzheimer's disease. So we just need to keep looking for all the clues that have our genes misspell so that we can see what those influences are and put the cures in place that give hope to families. Research is medicine's field of dreams from which we harness the findings to give hope to families. That's what this next vote will provide to them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Further discussion? Senator Budd.
Unrelated to this, I'll have an amendment later for S-265.
You know, Senator Markey's very personal and very emotional, for me, comment, although he speaks about his father's bicep and his thigh, that could be a comment on your thigh and not upon your father's bicep, but we'll let that go. But speaking more particularly to your bill, again, I thank you and Senator Collins for this. It is a public health maxim that that which is measured is addressed. If we are measuring and receiving a report of the resources being placed to address this future $1 trillion bill, we're more likely to address it if it is less than it should be. So I applaud you for this amendment. I think it's essential to helping us complete our obligation to the American people to make sure that we proactively address something which is a scourge. With that, I yield.
Further discussion? Okay. Thank you all. We'll now consider S-265, the Siren Reauthorization Act, and we have a manager's amendment. I move to adopt the manager's amendment in the nature of a substitute and have it be considered original text for the purpose of further amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Are there any amendments, any members who wish to speak or offer an amendment to S-265?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Budd.
I have an amendment to S-265 of the Siren Act, and my amendment would clarify naloxone injectors, fentanyl test strips, and medication disposal kits are available to our rural first responders. First responders and EMT need access to tools that can prevent and stop deadly drug overdoses. The opioid epidemic has destroyed families and communities across the country. I want to thank Senator Collins, Senator Durbin for their work on this legislation. I'm proud to support. Following discussions with the ranking member's staff, I will withdraw my amendment so that it can be addressed in the technical corrections.
Thanks, Senator Budd. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank my colleague, Senator Budd, for his work on this issue and for looking at it so closely. For those of you who are less familiar with this bill, it is one that Senator Durbin and I introduced that would reauthorize the successful rural Emergency Medical Services Training Grant Program, also called SIREN, as the ranking member pointed out. It helps rural EMS agencies recruit, train, and retain critically needed EMS personnel. It also helps small rural EMS agencies respond to and prevent drug overdoses in emergencies. Funding through this program has supported several EMS agencies across the state of Maine, including those in Franklin County, Presque Isle, and northern Maine, and Brooks. The city of Presque Isle, for example, has used SIREN funds to develop a new recruitment and training program to better serve Aroostook County, the largest county geographically in our state, and one that faces challenging workforce needs. I could go through the various ways that communities have used this important program in my state, but in the interest of time, I will submit my statement for the record. Let me just say that this program has made a real difference. If you talk to rural communities in your state, inevitably you're going to find that they're having difficulty in recruiting and retaining EMS personnel. And yet those personnel are a lifeline for local communities, and this federal investment is working. It's working to strengthen and increase the EMS workforce. I want to thank the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians, the International Association of Firefighters, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the National Rural Health Association, the National Volunteer Fire Council, and the National Fire Protection Association for their endorsement of this bill. We worked with all of those groups, and I would urge my colleagues to support SIREN and rural EMS workforce training and equipment needs.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Further discussion of S-265? Senator Cassidy?
Again, great staff work on the acronym. That'll be the highlight of the hearing, I think. I thank Senator Collins and her co-lead, Senator Durbin, for their leadership to ensure the effectiveness and continuity of our rural emergency health services. You know, if you look statistically, rural areas have worse health indicators. They tend to be older as well, and the rural hospitals are under incredible pressure. So it's essential that we maintain, and I think within the kind of whole constellation of what we know is happening to rural health, this is just a spot-on bill. I recognize Senator Budd's concerns regarding the underlying language. I will say that our staff feels like it does not have a problem as he is concerned about, but I understand his concern, and I'm committed to working together to make sure that Senator Budd is also reassured, and whatever changes required, if they are required, would be made. With that, I yield.
As someone who comes from perhaps the most rural state in America, I don't know Vermont, I think it's more rural than Maine, I am more than aware of this crisis, and I think this is a very important bill. But to be honest, I think we need to do more, and this is a bill we're going to come back and work on. Okay? We're going to expand this issue of how we make sure that in rural America people have the emergency medical service they need. So I want to thank everybody. This is a very important bill. All those, no, okay. So that's the end of discussion of S-134, 265, sorry. Now we are moving on to, where's that? Now we're moving on to S-1844. the well-known Animal Drug and Animal Generic Drug Use of Fee Amendments Act of 2023, and there is no manager's amendment. Are there any members who wish to speak or offer an amendment to S 1844?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer some remarks, but we may want to give Senator Baldwin just a second to get here and come back to this one.
Did you want to start it off, Senator Marshall?
Okay, we'll go ahead. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring up Marshall Amendment number 1, which we're co-leading with our colleague, Senator Baldwin. Our amendment's modeled after our bill with Senators Bennett and Senator Moran called the Innovative Feed Act. This is a bipartisan amendment that would establish a new pathway at the FDA for novel feed additives with a purpose to increase livestock efficiency and production. It ensures these products are not treated as drugs, like the ranking member said. These are food additives. Think about probiotics and vitamins in your own diet as well, that they don't need to be overly regulated by the FDA or held to that same standard as a prescription drug. Farmers indeed are the original conservationists, and year over year continue to produce more with less land, water, and feed. Even today, our dairy herd is half of the size it was when I was growing up, but yet are able to supply this country and the world its milk needs. What this legislation would do, among other things, is decrease methane production, give the opportunity to produce less methane from our cow herds and the cattle feeding industry. Currently, the FDA is treating certain feed products as drugs. This is an outdated system that doesn't help our livestock industry, and the FDA recognized this barrier. This is a common sense solution to the problem. This bill came from the agriculture industry and is supported by the ag industry. It has broad support of the 135 organizations signing on to this letter, including dairy, livestock, feed producers, pet food manufacturers, retailers, and more, including the Kansas Grain and Feed Association and the Kansas Livestock Association. Our global competitors approve these types of feed products and are cornering the market and innovating in this space. They're marketing products that demonstrate increased efficiency in meat and dairy production, that reduces byproducts and waste. Specifically, it decreases phosphate and nitrogen in the waste products and reduce foodborne pathogens dangerous to human health, like the chairman mentioned. We need to establish this new pathway so innovation can help here, not overseas. I want to thank Chairman Sanders, Ranking Member Cassidy for working so closely with us on this legislation. Many agree this fits well along with the other policy riders in this package. American ranchers and farmers set the gold standard because of their commitment to innovation and utilization at the latest technologies. Voting yes on this amendment shows you support for their mission to feed the world. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me commend Senators Baldwin and Marshall for all of the hard work that they have put into this amendment. This is a common-sense bipartisan policy that will help our farmers feed our communities and make animal products safer and healthier. I support this amendment and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Any further discussion? Senator Cassidy.
I also thank Senators Marshall and Baldwin and their staffs for the work on this policy. It's a straightforward deregulatory change to the FDA's review of animal products, creating a new category of zootechnical substances, clarifying the FDA must review these such as food additives instead of drugs. These products are similar to the dietary supplements Americans rely on to support their health. I took a whole handful this morning. And the FDA's framework for human products has a flexibility to allow for these types of products to come to the market through review like a food-like product without having to go through a full-fledged drug approval process. This policy gives the animal products framework the same flexibility. I support this policy because it's about markets, not mandates. It gives our farmers and ranchers more tools to make their operations safer, more efficient, without compromising animal or human safety, and I encourage all to support the amendment.
Senator Baldwin, just in time.
Sometimes it works that way. This is juggling markups. So first, I want to thank you, Chair Sanders and Ranking Member Cassidy, for your work on this markup. And today, as has been noted, we'll be voting on the animal drug and animal generic drug user fee amendments of 2023, for which I would like to thank and recognize my co-lead, Senator Mullen. This bill would reauthorize the Animal Drug User Fee Program, ensuring that FDA's Center for Veterinary Medicine can continue to do its vital job of reviewing animal drug applications. We'll also be voting on an amendment to ADUFA, which stands for the Animal Drug User Fee Amendment. And this amendment is the Innovative Feed Act. I co-lead this with Senator Marshall. Thank you for your work, Senator Marshall, on this with me. Our amendment would ensure that farmers and livestock producers have access to the products they have been asking for to improve both the health of their animals and the efficiency of their agricultural operations. Specifically, the legislation creates a pathway at FDA to expeditiously approve innovative food additives, products that do not currently fit into any existing pathway at FDA. Unfortunately, right now, some of these products are being evaluated under the drug pathway, and it could take up to 10 years to get them to market. Any further delay in passing this amendment would only harm American farmers in accessing products with vital functions, such as reducing salmonella colonization in chickens or increasing milk production in dairy cattle. It would also put farmers at a disadvantage in competing on an international stage, since products intended for the new FDA pathway are already being used around the world. So again, I want to thank Senator Marshall for his partnership on this bipartisan legislation, as well as the many stakeholders who have been advocating for its passage, including the milk producers, the animal feed industry, the National Grain and Feed, and the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives, who are among the 130 additional farmer and agribusiness groups that have come out in support of this bill and amendment. I encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of this amendment, and I also encourage a yes vote on the amended animal drug and animal generic drug user fee amendments of 2023. And I yield back.
Thank you. Any further discussion of S. 1844?
Mr. Chairman, I meant to submit for the record our letter to you and the ranking member from the 135 agriculture groups that support this amendment.
Without objection. All right, I think that concludes discussion of S. 1844, and thank everybody for their participation. We'll now consider S. 1852, the Sickle Cell Disease and Other Heritable Blood Disorders Research, Surveillance, Prevention, and Treatment Act of 2023. And on this bill, there are no amendments. Are there any members who wish to speak on S. 1852? Do you want to say more? Senator Cassidy.
I thank Senator Tim Scott with his co-lead, Senator Booker, for anyone who has helped a patient with sickle cell. You understand the terrible devastation this has, from necrosis of their hips to serial hemorrhages in the brain to multiple transfusions, so many complications. So I applaud Senator Scott and Booker for doing this. It builds upon previous efforts by the federal government, which I believe were started by Richard Nixon. But suffice that to say, it is something that is going to help a group of fellow Americans with terrible needs.
Okay, thank you. That concludes consideration of S. 1852. We will now go to S. 1855, the Special Diabetes Program Reauthorization Act of 2023, and there are no amendments. Are there any members who wish to speak on S. 1855?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this bipartisan legislation was introduced by Senator Shaheen and myself. We chair the Senate Diabetes Caucus. Our bipartisan bill would reauthorize and strengthen vital type 1 diabetes research at the National Institutes of Health and renew critical treatment, education, and prevention programs for Native American and Alaska Native communities who experience type 2 diabetes at nearly 3 times the national average. For more than 25 years, the Special Diabetes Program, comprised of the Special Statutory Funding Program for Type 1 Diabetes Research and the Special Diabetes Program for Indians, has delivered meaningful resources and research breakthroughs for those with type 1 diabetes, as well as for Native Americans and Alaska Natives. Together, these programs have become the nation's most strategic effort to combat diabetes and its complications. Without an extension, both programs are set to expire at the end of this fiscal year. Congress has reauthorized the Special Diabetes Program with bipartisan support numerous times since its inception in 1997, yet funding has remained flat since 2004. During this time, the cost of research has increased, as has the size of the population and the cost of medical care. For this reason, our bill would give a modest increase in the authorization level, the first increase in 20 years. Senator Shaheen and I recently led a letter signed by 60 senators, including many members of this committee, advocating for the program's reauthorization. The research under this program has led to tremendous advances in technology to manage diabetes, including laying the early groundwork for the artificial pancreas systems that have helped reduce costly and harmful complications and improving the quality of life for those with diabetes. I would ask unanimous consent to enter letters of support into the record from the JDRF, the American Diabetes Association, the Endocrine Society, and the National Indian Health Board.
Without objection.
Urge support for the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, further discussion? Senator Murkowski.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Senator Collins and Senator Shaheen for their leadership on this. As the ranking member on the Indian Affairs Committee, as well as the ranking member on the Interior Appropriations that has oversight of IHS, I can tell you that this issue of diabetes amongst our American Indian, Alaska Native population is just staggering, as Senator Collins has indicated, 3 times the national average. And when we think about the health care costs, the long-term, life-term health care costs associated with diabetes, in fairness, we can't do enough, so I appreciate your leadership on this.
Further discussion? Senator Cassidy.
I echo thanking Senators Collins and Shaheen for their work and pointing out, putting a little bit of a point on what Senator Murkowski said. There's so many health complications associated with diabetes, among them Alzheimer's. So as we have invested so much in this bill in terms of addressing Alzheimer's, those with insulin resistance associated diabetes are at a much higher risk of Alzheimer's. So as we treat diabetes, we treat many other things which we recognize as a national interest to do so. So thank you again for your efforts.
Okay. You know, what we have heard over and over again with regard to a number of the bills we're dealing today is the importance of prevention. We spend double what any other country spends on earth. We're not putting enough money into prevention. I think today we're dealing with Alzheimer's, we're dealing with diabetes. This is an important step forward. In my view, we've got to go a lot further. But I want to thank everybody for their good work on this important issue. Yes, Senator Murkowski.
I ask unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor to S 1855.
Without objection. Okay, I believe if there is no further discussion, we now have a quorum, and we will now move to votes. We will take votes in the order that we considered the bills and their amendments. We will complete votes for each bill and its amendments before moving to the next bill. We will begin with final passage of S-133 as amended. I move to favorably report S-133 as amended. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Murray? Aye. Senator Casey?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin? Aye. Senator Murphy? Aye. Senator Kane?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan? Aye. Senator Smith? Aye. Senator Lujan? Senator Hickenlooper?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Markey? Senator Cassidy?
Aye.
Senator Paul?
No by proxy.
Senator Collins? Senator Murkowski? Senator Braun?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Marshall? Senator Romney?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Tuberville?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Mullen?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Budd?
Aye.
Chairman Sanders?
Aye.
I have 20 ayes, 1 nay.
The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to and will be favorably reported as amendment. The next vote is on the final passage of S-134. I move to favorably report S-134. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Murray?
Aye.
Senator Casey?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin? Senator Murphy? Senator Kane?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan? Senator Smith? Senator Lujan? Senator Hickenlooper?
Aye by proxy. Aye in person, I gather.
Senator Markey? Senator Cassidy?
Aye.
Senator Paul?
No by proxy.
Senator Collins? Senator Murkowski? Senator Braun?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Marshall? Senator Romney?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Tuberville?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Mullen?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Budd? Chairman Sanders?
Aye.
I have 20 ayes, 1 nay.
The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to and will be favorably reported. The next vote is on final passage of S-265 as amended. I move to favorably report S-265 as amended. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Murray?
Aye.
Senator Casey?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin? Senator Murphy? Senator Kane?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan? Senator Smith? Senator Lujan? Senator Hickenlooper? Senator Markey? Senator Cassidy?
Aye.
Senator Paul?
No by proxy.
Senator Collins? Senator Murkowski? Senator Braun?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Marshall? Senator Romney?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Tuberville?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Mullen?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Budd? Chairman Sanders?
Aye.
I have 20 ayes, 1 nay.
The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to and will be favorably reported as amended. We will now vote to adopt the Marshall Amendment 1 to S-1844. The clerk will call the roll.
Aye.
Senator Casey?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin? Senator Murphy? Senator Kane?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan? Senator Smith? Senator Lujan? Senator Hickenlooper? Senator Markey? Senator Cassidy?
Aye.
Senator Paul?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Collins? Senator Murkowski? Senator Braun?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Marshall? Senator Romney?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Tuberville?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Mullen?
Yes by proxy.
Senator Budd?
I'm sorry. Tuberville is no by proxy. And Mullen is no by proxy.
Chairman Sanders?
Aye.
I have 19 ayes, 2 nays.
The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. We'll now vote on final passage of S-1844 as amended. I move to favorably report S-1844 as amended. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Murray? Aye. Senator Casey?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin? Aye. Senator Murphy? Aye. Senator Kane?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan? Aye. Senator Smith? Aye. Senator Lujan? Aye. Senator Hickenlooper? Aye. Senator Markey? Aye. Senator Cassidy?
Aye.
Senator Paul?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Collins? Aye. Senator Murkowski? Aye. Senator Braun?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Marshall? Aye. Senator Romney?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Tuberville?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Mullen?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Budd? Chairman Sanders?
Aye.
I have 21 ayes, 0 nays.
The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to and will be favorably reported as amended. Now we're moving to final passage of S 1852. I move to favorably report S 1852. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Murray? Aye. Senator Casey?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin? Aye. Senator Murphy? Aye. Senator Kane?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan? Aye. Senator Smith? Aye. Senator Lujan? Aye. Senator Hickenlooper? Aye. Senator Markey? Aye. Senator Cassidy?
Aye.
Senator Paul?
No by proxy.
Senator Collins? Aye. Senator Murkowski? Aye. Senator Braun?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Marshall? Aye. Senator Romney?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Tuberville?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Mullen?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Budd? Chairman Sanders?
Aye.
I have 20 ayes, 1 nay.
The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to and will be favorably reported. We now go to final passage of S 1855. I move to favorably report S 1855. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Murray? Senator Casey?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin? Aye. Senator Murphy? Aye. Senator Kane?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan? Aye. Senator Smith? Aye. Senator Lujan?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hickenlooper? Senator Markey? Senator Cassidy?
Aye.
Senator Paul?
No by proxy.
Senator Collins? Aye. Senator Murkowski?
Aye.
Senator Braun?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Marshall? Aye. Senator Romney?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Tuberville?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Mullen?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Budd?
Yes, by proxy.
Chairman Sanders?
Yes.
I have 20 ayes, 1 nay.
The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to and will be favorably reported. That, colleagues, concludes our votes. I move to authorize staff to make any required technical and conforming changes when preparing S 133, 134, 265, 1844, 1852, and 1855. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. That is all our business for today. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Committee stands adjourned.